What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so we are going to continue our coverage over the Supreme Power universe. Now, if you're new to Marvel Comics and you have no idea what Supreme Power is, it's technically the Squadron Supreme, but from the early 2000s. And if you don't know who the Squadron Supreme team is, let me explain. So back in the 1960s, Marvel had this big idea. And the question was, what would happen if the Avengers fought against the Justice League? Now, of course, Marvel couldn't use the characters on the Justice League because those characters belong to DC Comics. And so you have Marvel create a bunch of characters as a way to represent the characters on the Justice League. So you had Hyperion for Superman, Blur for Flash, Zarda for Wonder Woman, Nighthawk for Batman, and the list goes on. But it gave Marvel a way to say, we could do stories about the Avengers fighting against the Justice League without actually using the Justice League. Now, when it came to the Squadron Supreme, they came from an alternate universe because, of course, when it comes to Marvel, they have the multiverse. Now, over the years, you would see Marvel kind of use the Avengers to fight against the Squadron Supreme. But over the years as well, we would also see different versions of the Squadron Supreme because there are other universes out in the multiverse that has a Squadron Supreme team. And so it gave Marvel different ways to kind of use the team to fight against the Avengers. Now, in the early 2000s, Marvel launched Marvel Max. And Marvel Max was a way to do more adult comics, to tell more adult stories, like Punisher Max. Now, with that being said, the writer JMS, he was also working on Spider-Man at that time, and Marvel came to him and said, hey, we want you to work on a updated origin of the Squadron Supreme. And so that gave us Supreme Power. Now, this was a whole new universe of the Squadron Supreme, a whole new version. And so with that, he created Supreme Power. And Supreme Power was used as a way to kind of tell an updated origin of the Squadron Supreme. Now, Supreme Power was actually very popular, even though it only ran for 18 issues. But with those 18 issues, a lot of fans loved the series so much that Marvel then launched a bunch of different tie-ins or miniseries that comes after the actual main series had ended. So like, for example, Supreme Power Hyperion and the one we're covering today, Supreme Power Nighthawk. Now, with that being said, though, like I said, this was an updated origin of the actual team. And so today we're covering Supreme Power Nighthawk. Now, when it comes to Supreme Power Nighthawk, it actually takes place after Supreme Power, but at the same time, you don't really need to know what happened in Supreme Power to understand what's happening in this storyline. The only thing you need to know about Supreme Power is the origin of the character of Nighthawk. And what I mean by that is, when it comes to Nighthawk, you have to realize he is the Batman of this universe. His name is Kyle Richmond. Now, like Bruce Wayne, when it came to Kyle, his parents died, except when it came to Kyle's parents dying, they were killed off because they were black. They were killed off by a racist person. And so that led him to become the Nighthawk character. Now, when he did become the Nighthawk character, instead of being like Batman and trying to save everybody's lives who are innocent, he only saved the lives of the black people who are innocent. And that is it. And so if you're trying to hurt the black community in some kind of way, he will take you out. And that is it. And when I say he'll take you out, I literally mean he will kill you. And so if you're a non-black person attacking the black community and in Chicago, you are going to die by the hands of Nighthawk. That's all you literally need to know about the character for this storyline. And so the opening pages of this book, we actually do get confirmation that when it comes to Nighthawk, if you're going to attack the black community, most likely you are going to die because he is going to find you and then most likely kill you. And so we actually do pick up with a Caucasian person. Now, when it comes to this Caucasian person, what he did was, well, he did not actually steal anything from the black community, but he also did not attack the black community. What he did was he went into a black neighborhood in Chicago and decided to spray paint on one of the walls in the black neighborhood the hard N-word. And so as soon as Nighthawk saw that, he's like, that is a way of you attacking the black community by basically spraying on the wall that word right there. And so Nighthawk paid him a visit. Now, like I said earlier, usually Nighthawk will kill you off, but instead he's like, you know what? I'm not going to waste my time because technically you did not hurt, like you didn't actually beat someone down. You didn't physically hurt someone, but you did emotionally hurt this neighborhood. And now they know what you did. I'm going to let them take care of it. And so you actually have Nighthawk lead this Caucasian character in the middle of a black neighborhood, but surrounded by a bunch of black people who now know, oh, so you're the one going around our neighborhood spraying the hard N-word on different walls in our neighborhood. Okay. And you're also ruining a lot of different things in our neighborhood as well. Cool. You know what? We are going to technically jump you. And so you do have this Caucasian character as Nighthawk for help, but Nighthawk's all like, no, you deserve this. You attacked the black community, not physically, but emotionally. And that's enough for me to let them go ahead and handle you. And honestly, whatever they do to you, I don't honestly care. And he walks away. And so then we jump over to a mental facility. Now, when we do, we actually come to find out that when it comes to this mental facility, it does hold a lot of mental prisoners who are not fit for a regular prison because of their mental state. And so they're kept here. Now, a lot of these prisoners are up for parole. And so right now you do have a committee who is kind of there to kind of say, yes, you are approved for parole, or no, you denied for parole. And so you do have some prisoners actually get approved for the chance of having parole. But then it comes down to the last one, Stephen Benst. Now, Stephen Benst is going to be the bad guy of this storyline. Now, with that being said, though, as soon as he walks into the room to get judged for parole, you have one board member of the committee say no right off the bat. Like, as soon as his name is said, this guy says no. This man right here does not deserve to be out there in the public ever again. Now, of course, you do have the officers take him away, but then you have one of the newest members of the committee as an old member. Why did you do that? Like, that guy did not even have a fair trial, a fair chance to explain why he should have parole. And that is the moment we learn the origin of Stephen Benst and why he was denied the chance of parole. And we kind of find out that he was actually a pharmacist before he became a prisoner. But what he would do was he would give people extra medicine, or he would pretend to give people extra medicine. So, for example, if you were a family member, but only one person in that family in your house was covered by some kind of health insurance, then you only got enough pills for that one person. But then he'll give you extra pills, quotation marks, to help everybody in that household if everybody is sick. The problem was, though, the extra pills that he was putting in that bottle was actually something he made, which of course was something poisonous. And so, for example, this black family came in and they came for medicine, but of course, only one person was actually covered. And so he said, you know what? I feel bad about that. Here's some extra pills to cover everybody in the household, just in case everybody does get sick. Unfortunately, he put in poison pills. And so because that black mother gave each child and her own mother as well those pills, they all died because the pills he put in there were actually poisonous. Now, the only reason why he got caught because one of his clerks actually saw him pour extra pills into the medicine bottle. but not knowing that the pills he poured in there were actually poisonous. But when word got out how the black family actually died, she told the FBI, hey, this man did it. He gave them some kind of poison pills that killed off the entire family. And so the FBI moved in, they found him, got him, but when they came to his house, they found something else in his basement. And so what they found in his basement was actually a lab where he was creating this poison pills. But the thing was, he had different trials for years going on because they found a notebook. And apparently he was working in this lab for at least 2 years. Now, at first, it was said in his journal that he was testing on, rats and everything. But then he got bigger and bigger. Then he had animals like dogs and cats, and then it came humans. And so when it came to humans, it was kind of like, okay, now I know how my pills actually work. And so he would do this for years, give people, different kinds of people, these pills to kind of see what would actually happen to them. Would they die? Would they actually recover? And he made sure there was no kind of antidote. But when it came to the FBI going into that lab, they also found out that he had created so many different kinds of pills, he could literally take out half of Chicago. That's how crazy this guy was. Now, of course, when it came to his trial, he did plead not guilty. But of course, they're like, dude, listen, we have all this evidence on you. There's no way you're not guilty. And so he gets thrown in jail. But as soon as he does get thrown in jail, he is attacked by some black prisoners. And the reason why, because they found out that most of the pills that he was giving out to people were to black people. And so these black prisoners are like, we heard that you don't like black people, and we are going to make you like black people because of what you did. And apparently they had attacked him so bad, it kind of left him, not kind of, it did, completely catatonic. And so he's in his bad mental state. And so that's why he's here in this mental facility. But he hasn't talked for ever since that attack, honestly, in prison. But when it comes to this committee member, he doesn't feel bad for Steven at all. He's kind of like, no, he deserves to stay here in his facility for what he did. He destroyed so many family lives because he wanted to be some kind of god in his mind. So no, I don't care how bad his mental state is. He will never get parole at all. And so then we jump over to Nighthawk, who's right now meeting up with Deputy Mayor Stratt. Now, when it comes to Deputy Mayor Stratt, he actually does work alongside with Nighthawk, but on top of that, he does like what Nighthawk is doing for the black community. The problem is, though, Stratt works for the actual mayor of the city. And when it comes to the actual mayor of the city, he does not like Nighthawk. And the reason why, because when it comes to the mayor, he is trying to get reelected. He's trying to get back in the office once again. And one of the things he's trying to do to get himself reelected is saying that he will handle all crimes in Chicago in a better way, or be more efficient in handling the crimes in Chicago. But the problem is, though, the South and the West doesn't really work with the police anymore. Instead, the South and the West, which are mostly black neighborhoods, call out for Nighthawk. And of course, Nighthawk comes out and he handled the problems in those areas. And that right there is something the mayor hates, because now it seems like the public no longer trusts the police. And if police don't do their job, then what the mayor is trying to say he's trying to do, which is handle all crimes across the city, then it makes him look bad, because it's not really him taking on the crimes. It's really Nighthawk taking on the crimes. And so right now, it's Stratt saying, I'm telling you right now, the mayor is trying to take down all crimes, but now he's also coming after you because he hates what you actually have been doing for Chicago, even though it's more efficient than the police have been doing for the South and the West of Chicago. Now, the next section, we actually do see that Steven is going to break out of this mental facility by dressing up as a clown. And what I mean by that is we do see an employee right now taking Steven to a meeting room. Now, the meeting room is where Steven is supposed to meet with the committee to decide if he does get parole or not. Here's the thing, though. On his way there to the meeting room, they had already said he does not get parole at all. And so because his parole was denied, he needs to go back to his cell. Now, the employee who's right now escorting him to the meeting room gets told that and gets very upset. And the reason why he does get upset is the employee wanted to have a smoke break while they were kind of talking to Steven about his parole. But because his parole was denied, he now has to go back to his cell, which means that our first employee does lose his smoke break now. Now, while you do have our employee take Steven back to his cell, they are confronted by a clown. Now, the reason why this clown is here because in this same mental facility, they also have children here who are patients. And so the clown is their entertainment for the day. Except you do have the clown and our first employee walk away to have a conversation and also have a smoke break. Now, the reason why our employee actually does leave Steven behind, because technically Steven has not moved, talked, or done anything at all in like 2 years. And so to our guy here, he's kind of like, I'm not worried. You know what? I'm gonna get that smoke break because I know this patient won't do anything at all. But that's the problem. You still left a patient on his own. And so while the clown and our employee here were having that smoke break, Steven gets up and walks away and he hides from our employee. And so after the smoke break, you do have our guy who was supposed to watch Steven come back and find out, oh my God, Steven's not here. This is a problem. I have to find him. And we come to find out that Steven has snuck into the room where the clown and our guy here who was supposed to watch Steven were having that smoke break. And so while you have a guy looking for Steven, Steven goes into the room and kills off the clown. He comes behind the clown to kill him off to use his disguise as a way to break out of this mental facility. And so getting into the second chapter of this book, we actually do pick up with Nighthawk. Now, when we do, we actually see Nighthawk right now going to a drug house. Now, this takes place 5 weeks after the end of the first chapter where Steven had broken out of that mental facility. Either way, you do have Nighthawk going to this drug house. Now, the reason why he's coming here, because this drug house is hurting the Black community in Chicago. And so he's trying to figure out who is the new supplier of this new drug that is spreading around in the Black neighborhoods of Chicago. And so with that, Nighthawk breaks in. He does kill off a couple guys here and there, but he does corner one guy as a way to get the information that he is actually looking for. Now, here's the thing though, because as soon as Nighthawk does corner this guy does tell him, listen, I'm not the big guy here at all. Matter of fact, the big guy is kind of unknown to me, but he did give me a huge amount to spread across the different areas of Chicago. And of course, those areas being affected are Black neighborhoods. And so this is Nighthawk saying, okay, listen, who is it though? But the problem is when it comes to the guy that he is questioning, he dies. He literally spits up a ton of blood right in front of Nighthawk. And for Nighthawk, he's very confused. He's like, wait a second. I did not kill this kid at all. I broke his leg, yes, but he should not have died from that kind of injury. What had happened to him? And so he says, let me check on the rest of the people in this drug house. And when he does, when he comes back, he comes to find out there are a bunch of people right now who are just dead in this drug house. Like every single person that was part of this drug house had died because apparently they all took this new kind of drug that's been spreading across Chicago. And because this new drug is spreading across Chicago, you have people who are taking this drug dying left and right. And for example, everybody in this drug house died just like that. But then you have Nighthawk hear something, or he realized something. And so he does run into the bathroom. Now, when he does run into the bathroom, it's what he finds in the bathroom. Of course, it was a baby that was drowning in his own blood. And luckily for Nighthawk, he was able to get that baby out and save its life. But it shows that this drug is going to kill a lot of people and ruin a lot of families as well. But then we see Nighthawk actually go to a nearby hospital. Now, when he does go to this nearby hospital, this is really more of Nighthawk going there to kind of get some help for the baby. But on top of that, he does know someone there, and that is Dr. Arredondo. Now, when it comes to Dr. Arredondo, I really thought she was going to be very important for the storyline, but unfortunately, she is not. Like, yes, she does become somewhat of a love interest, but that's really it for her character. Now, with that being said, though, we do see her right now being confronted by Nighthawk. And this is Nighthawk saying, hey, listen, I found this baby. It needs some kind of medical help. Now, she does say, unfortunately, the baby has to wait in line. And the reason why she said that, because while she was on her break, she realized that she has been called so many times, because apparently in the ER, there are a lot of different problems happening at the moment. And so we kind of find out that apparently in the ER, it's completely booked. And the reason why, because other huge drug users in the city have come to the ER feeling very bad, and they're dying left and right, like the other drug users we saw in that drug house earlier, because they took that drug and that drug had killed them off left and right. And so you have drug users across the city who have been taking this drug are now dying left and right. Now, as we get into the third chapter of this book, we actually do pick up with Steven. Now, when it comes to the Nighthawk series, I have to remind you guys, it is part of the Marvel Max series, which means that when it comes to content, you may see some more adult things like naked people. And so when we actually do pick up with Steven, he's in Chicago. He's hiding out in some safe house. He killed a person to get this safe house, but when we actually do, he is naked. And so I can't show you that page or multiple pages because, again, he is naked and I don't want to get screwed over on YouTube. And so the only thing you need to know is that right now, he's in Chicago, he's watching the news, and he does hear about what's happening right now across Chicago, that drug poisoning. And so he's kind of intrigued to see what he has done in Chicago. And so as we get deeper into the third chapter, we actually do see right now, you do have city officials trying to calm down the public. And the reason why, because they don't want the public to freak out about the idea that right now there is some new kind of drug out there that can cause instant death after you take the pill. And so right now it's the city officials saying, don't worry, we're trying to get a handle on this new drug problem in Chicago. Now, as that's going on right there, you do have Nighthawk actually call up Dr. Arredondo. Now, when he does call her up, it's really her calling him, but she's telling him that she was able to get some samples of the drug so that he'll be able to actually analyze it. Except this man had already broke into the hospital that she worked at and stole the samples. And so when she called, she's like, hey, I got some samples for you. But then she's like, wait, where are the samples? He already stole them. And he told her, don't worry, I got it handled. Thanks for your help. Goodbye, later. But then we see that a meeting is going on between three particular people: the governor of Illinois, the mayor of Chicago, and also Deputy Mayor Stratt as well. Now, when it comes to this meeting, it's actually very, very important because they're talking about the idea that this is an actual problem in Chicago. Well, to two people, it is a problem because to the mayor, he honestly doesn't seem like it's a problem. And the reason why, because the only people who are dying right now across Chicago thanks to this new drug are drug addicts. And so to the mayor, he's kind of like, this is great because that means our city is finally getting cleaned up. But on top of that, though, we'll have no more drugs in our city if all the drug addicts are actually gone. Now, this is the mayor thinking that he'll finally have a clean city, but he has to realize something here. Even if you're able to remove all the current drug addicts, you're still going to have new ones pop up left and right to replace the drug addicts of the old ones. And so, yes, he may celebrate the idea the old drug addicts might all die off. but new ones are going to replace the old ones down the road. Now, when it comes to the deputy mayor, he's very upset in the idea that the mayor even said that. And the reason why, because even though these are drug addicts, they're still citizens of Chicago, and they're supposed to take care of them. They're supposed to help them, no matter what. And so right now, it's the deputy saying, how dare you basically turn your back against the people of Chicago, because you feel like if they die, the city will finally be clean, even though that is a huge if that actually does happen. Now, when it comes to the governor, he's kind of like, listen, this drug problem is not going to go away. It's only going to get worse before it actually gets better. But then you have the governor actually tell the mayor and deputy mayor, we think we have an idea who could be the new supplier of this new drug. The problem is, though, they cannot get close to this person at all. Now, we come to find out why the mayor, the deputy mayor, and also the governor are unable to make a move on this new supplier. And the reason why? Because he is a federal judge. The new supplier of this drug that is spreading across Chicago right now is coming from this federal judge. Now, it's not like he's the one who's making it, but of course, he is the one who's heavily supplying this drug across Chicago. And the reason why I say that, because what he has been doing is corrupting smaller cops in different parts of the police department in Chicago to be couriers for him to spread the drug across Chicago. He's part of this new drug ring in Chicago. And so that's why the governor and the mayor and the deputy mayor are unable to do anything at all, because they need hardcore evidence to say he is actually guilty to take him down. So with them being unable to make a move, that gives Nighthawk the chance to actually make a move. And let's not forget, if you try to withhold any kind of information from Nighthawk, he's going to break your kneecaps. He's going to break your bones and make you beg for death until you are able to actually give what he wants to hear. And here's the thing, he does break the kneecap of this federal judge. And he does say, listen, if you don't tell me what I want to know, that other kneecap is about to go as well. And so you do have this federal judge actually tell Nighthawk everything he wants to know. Now, Nighthawk wants to kill off this guy, but unfortunately, Nighthawk did attack him at the middle of this golf course. And so that means you have a lot of witnesses right now realizing that, oh my gosh, there's Nighthawk right now, and it seems like he's about to kill off that federal judge. And so Nighthawk's kind of like, know what? I'm not going to kill you in front of these people, but you did suffer enough to give me what I want to get, which of course is information on this new drug ring. Because even though this federal judge is the one right now supplying this new drug in Chicago, someone has to give him the drug so that he'll be able to actually supply the drug addicts in Chicago with this new drug. But then we jump back over to the mayor. Now we have to remember, when it comes to this mayor, he honestly doesn't care about what happens to the people of Chicago. And the reason why, because to him, he's kind of like, listen, if the drug addicts actually die off, that means that helps us keep the streets clean when it comes to drugs across Chicago. But at the same time, though, you still have a lot of people dying left and right because of this new drug. And the problem is, though, could this technically spread into other things that could affect people who are not drug addicts at all? That's the fear the public has. But when it comes to the mayor, he's trying to downplay every single thing that has happened so far. Now, after his press conference, you do have Strat come over to him and try to tell him once again, what you are doing is actually wrong. You're downplaying this whole situation. You're not showing that you actually care for the people of Chicago. Now, this is where the mayor is going to mess up. And the reason why? Because you have the mayor say, listen, it's done, it's done. I told the city that this is not no big deal. we can all relax. Matter of fact, if I want to get reelected, I have to show the people I'm like them, a family man. Tomorrow is my son's birthday. And with that being said, I want cameras there to show them, the people of Chicago, that their mayor is also a family man. He goes down and celebrates with his kids or his wife with his kid's birthday. He wants to show the world this great picture of himself. But unfortunately, what he just did is open the door to have the most worst thing happen to this guy. And the reason why I said that, because we actually do pick up with Steven. And we have to remember, Steven is still out there just free to the world to do anything he wants to do. And right now it's him saying, I'm going to show the world I'm still able or still capable enough to make powerful poisons that can kill people off left and right. And so his next example is to go to the mayor's son's birthday party. And this is the real messed up part, because the mayor is not there. And so you do have Steven pretend to be this clown, to be the entertainment for this young boy's birthday party. But no one at this party realized that this is going to be their last day, that they are going to die by the hands of Steven. And so this is going to be a very dark day for the mayor as we work our way to the next chapter. And so as we get into the 4th chapter of this book, we actually do pick up with these two guys at a bar. Now, these two guys are not really that important for the story, just for this section really, but honestly not that much. And what I mean by that is these two guys at the bar, they do get into a fight. And the reason why they do get into a fight is because they were watching the news. And you have the news report that when it came to the mayor's son's birthday party, everybody died except the mayor because he was not there. But everybody else at that party, the children, the wives, the husbands, they all died just like that. And the news is telling the people of Chicago that they had died thanks to some kind of food poisoning. But the big question the city has right now is that, is this food poisoning incident related to this new drug problem in Chicago? But unfortunately, no one has any kinds of answers at all. Either way, the two guys at the bar, they do get into a fight. And the reason why, because one guy feels like the mayor actually deserves this. And the reason why, because when it comes to Chicago, it's a really bad area. It's a really bad city to this guy. And he blames the mayor. He says the mayor has not done his job at all. The mayor has not tried to actually make Chicago better at all. And so with that being said, I think he actually deserves this, the death of his kid and his wife. Now, the other guy does get very upset because he's kind of like, how dare you? Yes, this man may be some corrupt mayor. Yes, this man may be a very bad mayor to us and to the rest of Chicago. But this is a man who's going through one of the worst tragedies to have ever in someone's life. This man lost his wife and his son all just like that. His entire family's gone just like that. And here you are saying that he deserves that? No, that is not fair, because that kid, that wife, they were innocent and they died. That right there is a real messed up thing to say. And so they do get in a fight, but the fight does get broken up by the bartender. But then we jump over to the mayor of Chicago. Now, when we do, this is the mayor right now getting ready for a press conference. And the reason why, because he has to talk to the city of Chicago about what happened to his wife and kid. And the reason why, because now you have the news and the public actually talking about the idea that his family's death could be related to this drug problem that's happening all over Chicago. And so he has to do this press conference to kind of talk about what happened to his family. But at the same time, this was the man who did a press conference earlier and tried to downplay the drug problem in Chicago. And so now he has to come back and say, I was wrong. I was wrong for downplaying the drug problem in Chicago. I should have taken this thing more seriously, and from here on out, I'm going to. And so he has to do this press conference, but he's having a hard time actually getting ready for it, because every time he wants to get up and go and do the press conference, he thinks about his wife and kid and realize they are dead, and most likely because he did not try to actually take this drug problem very seriously. And so it's kind of like, yeah, this is a very huge day for him. And when it comes to the mayor, he does admit that he was wrong for downplaying his drug problem, except he feels like he deserves death. And the reason why I say that, because he actually does kill himself off. Now, I'm not going to show this scene right here because it is suicide, but he is dead. He did kill himself off because now he feels like he is responsible for the death of his son and his wife. And so now he's officially dead. But then we jump over to Nighthawk. Now, when we do, this is Nighthawk right now having a conversation on the phone with Strat. And the reason why, because they're trying to figure out who could be behind this new drug problem in Chicago. Who is killing off all these different drug addicts across Chicago? And that is the moment everything comes together for Nighthawk. And the reason why, because Nighthawk does see a lot of police officers right now at different parks in Chicago confronting different people who could be the reason why they have this new drug problem in Chicago. And the reason why, because you have the deputy mayor tell Nighthawk that when he came to the mayor's wife hired a clown that was working in one of the many parks in Chicago, and he was at a good price, meaning that he was cheaper than most clowns in Chicago. And so she hired him to do their son's birthday party. And so what the deputy mayor is actually saying right now is that there is a possibility that the person who killed off the mayor's son and wife and all their guests at that party was the clown that she hired. And right now they're trying to figure out who was that clown that she actually hired. But then you have Nighthawk say, listen, I know the new drug that's hitting Chicago came from a certain kind of supplier, that supplier being a federal judge. But the federal judge was using crooked cops as a way to spread his drug across Chicago, kind of like them being couriers for him. And so Nighthawk says he has a list of people who could actually be behind the death of the mayor's wife and son, but on top of that, this new drug problem in Chicago. And the reason why he's saying all of this for, because Nighthawk also tells us that there was a huge shipment of drugs that had arrived in Chicago, but that huge shipment got taken away by someone else, somebody unknown. And so what Nighthawk is actually saying right now is that one of the couriers for that federal judge possibly got word of that drug shipment, went to that shipment, took the drugs, and began to spread the drugs across Chicago to begin his crazy killing spree in Chicago. And so we actually do pick up with Nighthawk. Now, when we do, this is Nighthawk right now working through the list of names of people who could have technically stolen the shipment of drugs to use it for their own personal gain. And so when he works through the list of couriers who work for that federal judge, he did select someone who would most likely stolen that huge shipment of drugs. Now, the person he selected is correct, but also incorrect as well. And the reason why, because that person he selected did steal the drugs. Unfortunately, he was killed off by Steven. And so when that guy stole the drugs and brought it back to his safe house, Steven found him, killed him off, took over the safe house, but then began to play around with that shipment of drugs to kind of change it a tad bit so that it would be very poisonous to whoever actually takes the drug. And so, yes, when it comes to Nighthawk, he did select the right person. It's just the person he select is already dead. And so when Nighthawk goes to that house where that guy actually lives, he will not find that guy. I mean, he'll find his dead body, but he's also going to find Steven. But when he actually does find Steven, it's too late. And what I mean is that when Nighthawk arrives, he does find the guy who most likely did steal the shipment. But when he finds him, that guy been dead for so long that bugs are technically crawling out of his dead bodies. But while you have Nighthawk kind of looking over the dead body and getting very sick at how the body actually looks, he's knocked out from behind by, of course, Steven. And so, yes, Nighthawk got it right, but at the same time, he got it wrong. And so we get into the 5th chapter. Now, when we do get into the 5th chapter of this book, we actually do pick up with Nighthawk right now being tied down. Now, with him being tied down, of course, this is where you have Steven begin the process of doing your usual bad guy thing, where you have Steven kind of talking to Nighthawk about his master plan, where you have Steven kind of talking to Nighthawk about the idea of why he's doing all of this for. And so what you have Steven actually tell Nighthawk is that when it comes to his reasoning behind all of this, because he felt like there was some kind of hole in his heart, some kind of hole in his soul. And he felt like every single person that he had killed off in Chicago, thanks to this new kind of drug that he had created, would basically kind of help fill in that hole in his soul. But the problem is, though, even though he killed off so many people in Chicago, that hole in his soul is not being filled up at all. Now, this is where we come to find out how Steven pulled all this off. And what Steven tells Nighthawk, but also tells us as well, when it came to a certain courier, a cop, the cop he killed off to get this safe house, that cop actually worked at the same mental facility that Steven was actually working at. And that cop just kept talking and talking about how the federal judge is technically getting drugs and trying to spread drugs across Gotham. And he has all these different cops who are dirty cops being couriers for the judge to spread the drugs across Chicago. And because this cop was talking so much while working at the same mental facility that Steven was being held in, Steven realized, I have a plan here. If I'm able to get my hands on that huge shipment, I could do some crazy things in Chicago. And so even though you had the mental facility believe that Steven could no longer talk or could no longer actually have any kind of mental activity, he was actually sitting there and plotting his escape. And after he was able to escape, he was also plotting how to get his hands on the drugs and how to use the drugs. And so that explains what happened so far in this entire story. Now, while you have Steven kind of telling Nighthawk all of this, Nighthawk was also trying to find a way to break free, to hopefully take down Steven. And so while you had Steven talking to Nighthawk, Nighthawk was able to actually find a way to break free by actually setting Steven on fire. But this is going to lead into a battle between the two characters. And so because you had Nighthawk actually set Steven on fire, Nighthawk has to get out of there. And the reason why, because when he did set Steven on fire, he also set the building on fire. And so the flames kind of cut a path between Steven and also Nighthawk as well. And so Nighthawk has to get out of there before he's also taken with the flames. But that also gives Steven the chance to kind of put the flames out on his body and find a way to actually be able to escape the building. And so with all the different commotions happening, oh, by the way, this safe house or this safe apartment actually was part of an apartment complex. And so with the building being on fire, you do have firefighters showing up, but you also have everybody else in this complex trying to leave as well. And so with all these different kinds of commotion, Steven was able to get away, but Nighthawk had to jump out the window, and right now he needs some serious medical help. And so you do have Nighthawk say, I'm going to go see my friend, the doctor, to hopefully get some kind of medical help because right now I need it really badly. Now, we actually do see Nighthawk go over to the same hospital that Dr. Aridano is working at. Now, Remember what I said earlier. When it comes to Dr. Arredondo, she is going to be the love interest for Nighthawk, but literally just for this section and the next one. And you see what I mean here in a moment, because you do have her right now being stopped by Nighthawk. And when he does stop her, he's all like, hey, I need your help. Now, when he comes to her, he's not wearing the mask at all. He's wearing his regular day clothes. And right off the bat, she knows, oh my God, you're Nighthawk. But she also knows who he is. Now, when it comes to Nighthawk, he is a billionaire or a millionaire. I have no idea how rich he is. But either way, he's one of those quiet ones where technically most people don't even know about him, but he does have the money. Now, with that being said, she does recognize him. She's like, oh my God, I know who you are. You're Kyle Richmond. But at the same time, she also knows that he is Nighthawk. And because he's done so much for her as Nighthawk, but apparently he has also done so much for the city of Chicago as Kyle, she kind of loves this man. And so she gives him a kiss. But she also tells him great news. The baby that he saved earlier is getting better. The problem is, though, they have to find the child's home, because if they don't, he'll go in foster care, which is something she and him both do not want to happen to the child. Either way, she does give him some kind of medical help. But the problem is, though, while they're kissing and talking, someone was actually watching them. Somebody with clown shoes. And we already know that it was Steven. And the reason why, because when we see the doctor leave Kyle behind to kind of go check up on the baby, she was being followed. But of course, she has no idea that she was being followed. And so as she works her way up to the baby's room to make sure that he is okay, while she's leaving the room, that is the moment she is grabbed from behind by Steven. And you have Steven inject the drug into her body, which of course kills her off just like that. She's dead. And so when it came to Kyle, someone else that he briefly cared for or loved was just taken away from him. And he has no idea because he's still down in ER. She died upstairs. And so when he finds out, it's kind of like, okay, he is definitely going to kill off Steven now. And so as we jump into the 6th chapter of this book, we actually do pick up with the city officials actually lying to the public. And what I mean by that is you have the city officials telling the public that they were able to get the guy who was giving out bad drugs across Chicago. Now, what they actually did was they got the guy who originally stole the shipment from the federal judge, the bad courier, the one that was killed off by Steven. But here's the thing. The city officials is telling the public, yeah, we got him. He's basically taken care of. Everything is okay now. But when it comes to the deputy mayor, he's all like, you guys are lying. The guy you said who is responsible for the drug poisoning across Chicago was your basic regular day cop. He was not no kind of scientist. There is no way he was able to take that drug and change it into some kind of poison drug. There's no way. The real person behind this is still out there. And really, he's correct. The real person is still out there. It's Steven. He got away, but it all comes down to Nighthawk. But getting back over to Nighthawk, we do see Nighthawk finding out that the woman that he briefly began to start to like is now dead. And seeing her dead, it reminds him of his parents. People who were taken out of this world, who were innocent and was just trying to be a good person in this world. And now they were killed off by some crazy man, just like his parents were. And so this is a man saying, I am going to get revenge for the death of a lady that I was going to hopefully had some kind of future with. Which honestly, we all know he may or may not had a future with her, but he could have had one if she had stayed alive. But getting back over to Steven, we actually do see Steven right now in the streets just watching the news, talk about the idea that they were able to get the guy who was responsible for the drug poisoning, even though Steven is the one who is responsible and he's watching the news say, yeah, we got him, everything's good. But of course, that was a huge lie. Now, some cops do come up to him, and these cops realize who he actually is, that technically he is a bad guy. But unfortunately, they're killed off by Steven, and he's able to continue on. But we kind of find out he has something in the bag that he's carrying, something very important in that bag. But getting back over to Nighthawk, we do see him right now gearing up. And when I say gearing up, I mean literally he went back to his base, got all the gear he needs to say, you know what, it's time for me to go after this guy, to bring this guy to justice, because this guy killed off someone I actually cared for. And that right there is not okay. And so this is Nighthawk saying, you know what, when I find Steven, I am for sure going to kill him off. And so this is an angry Nighthawk. But this leads into the final section of the book, where you do have Nighthawk right now finding Steven, and Steven went to the water pumps of the city. Now, this is actually very important. And the reason why, because this is right now Nighthawk realizing that what Steven is trying to do. Steven is trying to drop his poison into the water supply of Chicago so that it will be spread across Chicago completely. And so if anybody drinks the water from the water supply of Chicago, they are going to be affected by his poison. And so this is Nighthawk saying, listen, I don't know what you think you're going to do here, but when it comes to the filter of this place, it'll be able to filter out your poison, which means that you'll be unable to actually pull off your game plan. Except that is the moment you have Steven tell Nighthawk, oh, you got my plan completely wrong, my dude. That in reality, what I'm trying to do is kill off a certain baby. The baby that Nighthawk said at the very beginning of this book, the one that he left behind with the doctor, the one that she cared for so much. Well, Steven found out about the baby, grabbed the baby, and now he put the baby in the bag and threw it into the water supply, meaning that the baby is going to be one, drowned in that bag, or two, probably crushed in some kind of facility machine. And so Nighthawk has to save the baby, but to also stop Steven as well. Now, to go ahead and kind of wrap up today's video, you do have Nighthawk actually being able to save the baby, but at the same time, he does kill off Steven by literally blasting a hole in the guy's chest, like a hole in this guy's chest. It's all bloody. Either way, he's dead. Steven's dead and the baby is saved. Now, we do get an extra page where it does seem like Nighthawk has an idea of possibly adopting the baby. And honestly, it's kind of like a whole Robin thing right here. And what I mean by that is we have to remember Nighthawk is Batman in this book. It's just that Marvel couldn't use Batman. And so they made Nighthawk. And so when it comes to Nighthawk, he needs a Robin. This child right here has the capability to actually become the Robin of this universe. But with that being said, though, this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.